तच्छन्योरावृणीमहे गातुं यज्ञाय गातुं यज्ञपतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वं दिगातु भेषजम् शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शं चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ओम् शं नो नमो ब्रह्मण्य देवाय गो ब्राह्मण हिताय च जगत् हिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः नमो महावदान्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So thank you for having me. I was thinking about the title just a few minutes ago. The thought that came into my mind was how Prabhupada himself became detached by becoming a vanaprastha and effectively leaving his family life way back during, I guess it was 1954, which would have been before I was born. When he left his business, as we know from the history, Prabhupada was doing a small pharmaceutical. We call it pharmaceutical, but he was basically selling a pain balm. That's what I know. I mean, he might have been selling other things. At one time, it was the Prayag pharmacy when he was living in Prayagraj, which is now the official name of what used to be called Allahabad, where the Triveni Sangam is situated. And leaving that, suddenly he went to a place called Jhansi, which in ISKCON has become well known because of Prabhupada's history. It's a rather obscure place in India. It's south of Vrindavan. It's a peninsula, kind of like Florida, where I am at present, surrounded by Madhya Pradesh, whereas Florida is surrounded by the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. So Jhansi is a district in Uttar Pradesh, surrounded by Madhya Pradesh. Prabhupada went there and began his preaching activities. Somehow, I mean, things are not 100% clear, but he obtained a large building where he began the League of Devotees. And as we all know, that endeavor was not particularly successful. One scholarly person became his disciple, but later on he became independent, and he passed away a few years ago, Acharya Prabhakar Mishra. He was a scholarly individual. I saw him, but I didn't interact with him. I saw him at some function, and he was the self-styled Acharya Prabhakar. This was a long time ago, might have been at a Kumbh Mela, can't remember now. So anyway, Prabhupada became detached. He lived as a pracharak of Krishna Bhakti and Gaudiya Vaishnavism in Jhansi. And that went on for a few years. And afterwards, when it became untenable for him to continue residing there for various reasons, one of them being he had to vacate that There was pressure and he vacated the building. And so he went to Vrindavan. I'm looking at a picture of Vrindavan behind Ramachandra Prabhu, I think. Is it a collage? Right? It's a collage of different...
No, it's the Madan Mohan temple. It's just a panoramic view.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I know Madan Mohan I recognize, but the other buildings, I guess it's not from the Parikrama Marg view, where you only see Madan Mohan. Anyway, so Prabhupada went to Vrindavan, as many of us know, I don't know how many of my viewers tonight have read Prabhupada's biography. First, it came out in 6 volumes. It is not complete, but it's all we have. I mean, we have to acknowledge with appreciation the work that was done to put that together. And it will stand as a historical testament to Prabhupada's lifetime. By comparison, as you can see, walking behind me is my wife. So I am not detached like Prabhupada. And I was thinking like that. To really become detached it's difficult for most people. According to the Vedic concept, only Brahmanas take sannyas. Only Kshatriyas come up to taking Vanaprastha ashram. And Vaishyas and Shudras, the vast majority of the human population, are only in the Grihastha ashram. This is the Vedic provision. Now, the pramana for that is there somewhere, but I don't have it in hand. But Prabhupada taught like that. So Prabhupada actually was from a Vaishya background by birth. So Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not espouse caste on the basis of birth and birth alone. But if you read Prabhupada's purports, he definitely acknowledged that there are castes. And, this expression, I'm sorry I said that. I take it back. It's a kind of an English expressionism that just automatically comes out of your mouth. But the fact of the matter is that in India and abroad, there's a very anti-caste mentality movement. Sab log tumko dekh sakte. Sorry, fact of life. In 1977, I went to Delhi to extend my visa. And I had a letter from one of the wealthiest people in Hyderabad, who Prabhupada used to stay in his house when he came to Hyderabad 2 or 3 times, because the temple didn't get inaugurated till 76. So I think Prabhupada came in 72 and 74 and 75. I was there, 74 and 75. I wasn't there in 72. And he stayed in the home of this rich businessman whose son was in politics. But he was in politics as a financial supporter to some very big politicians at the time. And because of that, I went to the health minister of India at the time to extend my visa. And he gave me an invitation to a program that he had arranged Jati Toro Sammelan, Break the Caste Conference. And this was 1977. This was just after Indira Gandhi had lost power, and the Janata government of Morarji Desai was in first non-Congress government in the history of India. So the history was what, 47, 57, 67, it was 30 years old. I mean, more time has passed since then than had passed between the independence of India and that government. There was an Indian devotee who happened to be in Delhi at that time, and I showed him this invitation, and he said, yeah. I said, what, would you like to come with me to this conference? The Prime Minister was going to inaugurate the conference, the Deputy Prime Minister. So he said, yes. That devotee was the late Bhakti Swarup Damodar Swami. He was a brahmachari at that time, and together we went to this Break the Caste conference. Anyway, I'll spare you the details, but coming back to the topic, the caste system, and we are following it. We are following the caste system. It's called Varnashram. Varna means occupation. But when you have a division of these occupations, it's called a caste. Now, there are two concepts. One is you're born in a particular family, and so that is your caste. You cannot change it. And the other concept that Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur taught was you can change your caste if you have the qualities and activities of another caste. The sad fact of history is that many, many persons from the Brahmin caste gave up Brahma karmas, the activities of the Brahmanas. Now, that doesn't mean that all of them have given up the activities. They haven't. I know hundreds of scholars. You know, earlier I was introduced as a Sanskrit scholar. I have to admit, frankly, that I am not a Sanskrit scholar. I am a Sanskrit enthusiast. I can converse in Sanskrit, Samskrita bhasha, dvarena vartalapaha bhavati, matkrite kashtam nasti. I can go on speaking in Sanskrit my whole life, no problem. Doesn't mean I know the in and out or the totality of the language. Let's put it like that. Now, Prabhupada had commented it takes 12 years to learn Sanskrit. What he meant, now after all these years, I understand that there is a system of memorizing the sutras. There's a system of, what are the sutras? 2,000 years ago, the sage, we call him the sage Panini, wrote almost 4,000 sutras describing the Sanskrit language. He did not create the language. He observed the language. He wrote the sutras. And those sutras are definitive observations on every aspect of the language that even linguists all around the world use to understand language. So it's called grammar and linguistics, and there's another word that used to be used before linguistics. I'm forgetting it right now. Anyway, it means linguistics. Now, memorizing those 4,000 sutras is only one, it's a little less than 4,000, but it's only one part of learning the Sanskrit language. There are 2,000 verbal roots called the Dhatu Pat. Dhatu is a verbal root like bhaj, bhajate, govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami, right? Bhaj means to worship. So that's one root. Kru, you might have heard Adi Shankaracharya, famous Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karane. Dukrin, Kru or Kri, is the root of karma, action, right? So there are 2,000 such verbal roots. You had to memorize the sutras, you had to memorize the verbal roots. There are people today in Bharata, India, who do this. Wait a minute, that's not all. Then you should study the sage Patanjali's commentary on Panini's Ashtadhyayi, his 3,900 and however many, I didn't catch that number yet, I should, sutras. So that's called the Mahabhashya, the great commentary. It doesn't end there, it goes on. So maybe 12 years, maybe 20 years, maybe if you're brilliant, you could study it all, bang, 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 bang. That's grammar. So we all speak English. Today's program is in English. Some of us speak Hindi. Some of us speak Gujarati, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, all the Indian languages, or world languages like Russian, German, French, Italian, or whatever. No, none of these people who speak those languages, none of them, excuse me, probably none of them, learned grammar before they learned the language, right? Who did it? No woman, mother, calls her child, my dear child, today is grammar lesson number 1. Doesn't happen. I've never heard of it happening. Maybe I can be corrected if there's such a thing. So Samskrita Bhashya is the language of Vedic literature. And the concept of caste, the concept of vairagya, which is today's topic, detachment from sense gratification. Basically, that's what it is. And yet, unless you live like Haridas Thakur or Shukadev, you haven't really become fully detached. But by taking sannyas, giving up family life, you detach yourself from a heck of a lot of material pleasures. I won't enumerate those pleasures, but the most basic of all pleasure is eating. We all have to eat. Without eating, you can't sustain, and yet Shukadev and Haridas Thakur, Shukadev milk, Haridas Thakur buttermilk. Takram. You know, there's a saying in Sanskrit here. Learn a little Sanskrit today. Takram shakrasya durlabham. How many of you have heard this? Anybody heard this before? Takram shakrasya durlabham. Takram, buttermilk, durlabham, rare, shakrasya of Indra. Indra's another name is Shakra. You know, just like there's 1,000 names of Vishnu, Vishnu Sahasranam, Indra has many names. Ganesh has 1,000 names, Indra has 1,000 names. So Takram Shakrasya Durlabham. Now, what is buttermilk? Buttermilk means that the dahi, mantanam, churning of yogurt to make butter. And when you separate that butter from the yogurt, from the dahi, whatever you want to call it, you get buttermilk. So Haridas Thakur drank a little buttermilk every day and sustained his life. He was living in a cave and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I did it. I mentioned the Maha Mantra, which I did earlier. That's what we understand, Harinam. Of course, some people, some very funny people, I won't mention the names, but after the disappearance of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, some of his followers stopped Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Kirtan by saying it wasn't in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And later on, they started it again, but there was a caveat. You had to, because Bhakti Vinod Thakur's bhajan was there, Gai Gaur Madhur Sware, and then the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So in that, there's an institution, I won't mention the name, but it's in North Calcutta, so you can guess now the name of that institution. Many of you will not know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Because in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra may not have been written, but Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadhavaya Namaha, Harinam is there. So Haridas Thakur, Shukadev, it doesn't say what mantra he chanted, does it? In the Bhagavatam, it just says that he became totally detached from birth. He had a higher taste. So this was this topic today, detachment through a higher taste. How does that relate to the caste system? Because all of these higher tastes are mentioned in Vedic literature. And the teachings of Vedic literature is that we should follow the Varnashram system. So there's objection to that. Who objected?
It's 8 o'clock.
It was the British Raj. The British, and before the British, the Arab invaders who conquered India. Before that, we understand from Bhagavad Gita, Evam Parampara Praptam, Imam Rajarshayo Viduhu. This knowledge was passed down by Rajarshis. Why were they rishis? I'll tell you why. They studied Vedas, Vedadhyayanam. 10th canto, chapter 45, Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 33, 34, 35, 36 describes how Krishna and Balaram themselves went to Avanti, to the home of Sandipani, who was from Banaras. He was from Kashi. It's written in the Bhagavatam. And what did they study? Vedas, Upanishads, Vedangas, Anvikshikim, logic, Dhanurveda, all these things are mentioned. Why did Krishna and Balaram study? They didn't need to study anything. They're avatars. They know everything, Sarvagya. Krishna and Balaram are two bodies, but one person. That is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narayana, Vishnu, Krishna. To set an example for the human society, they showed what is the Vedic educational syllabus. And they got educated, and it's written there, hearing one time only. They learned the lesson. They memorized everything. Grammar is not mentioned there, interestingly enough. Vyakaranam is not mentioned. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Dashamaskanda, 10th canto, he didn't mention, Shukadev didn't mention Vyakaranam. They already knew the language. Prabhupada described that in the past, people were more intelligent than now. And we can see people seem to have intelligence, but they indulge in all kinds of tamasic activities in the mode of ignorance. So getting a higher taste means to give up the lower taste, right? Getting a higher taste, you have to give up the lower taste. What is the lower taste? Non-vegetarian food. A god brother of mine, who you all know very well and probably love very well, but I won't mention his name, has a disciple, an uninitiated disciple, who is a very good photographer and videographer. Today, he sent me a video that he saw on the internet. And the fellow who's making these videos literally has a few 100,000 followers on YouTube and Facebook. I won't mention the name. But the video was about the most expensive foods. And believe me, it's all non-vegetarian food, mostly. I mean, an ice cream in a restaurant costs $25,000. Now, for the ordinary man to eat an ice cream that costs $25,000 is madness. But there are people out there who have the wherewithal, right? The billionaires of the world and the multimillionaires know how to fritter their money away. They are not Sokar. Sokar in Chennai, which used to be Madras, way back in 1978, I spent a month. Just now I spent a month in South Florida. And similarly, I spent a month in Chennai in 1978. There was no ISKCON at the time. There had been an ISKCON temple. Prabhupada had come to Chennai. I was present January 1st and 2nd, 1976. 2.5 years later, from Hyderabad, I went there to collect funds. And I stayed in Agarwal Dharamshala in Sokarpet. Sokar is a word that comes from Sanskrit, sadhu karaha. Sadhu is good, and karaha, one who does good. Businessmen, Vaishyas, were expected to do good with the money that they earned or the wealth that they had. Previously, there was no cash. Now also we were entering the cashless society phase. You have wealth, but you don't have it in cash. So, sadhu karaha, do good. One of the ways in doing good is to feed people. So if you go to Vrindavan, if you go to Haridwar, Rishikesh, you'll see bandaras, right? Free feeding. Now I'm going to blow the horn of ISKCON Baroda, where we feed 700 to 1,000 people at the gate of the temple every day. Thanks to a Sokar, Sadhu Karaha, somebody who wants to do good, who happens to be fabulously wealthy. So that's how wealth was used. That's another form of detachment. Seeing other people, what is it? Paradukha dukhi. If you are unhappy because of the unhappiness of others, you want to see that, they become happy somehow. So the system in Bharata was to build dharamshalas, right? And to feed people. Annadanam. Prabhupada was not so much in favor of that, in one sense. Outside of the temple, he wasn't in favor. I'm sorry. He was in favor inside the temples. Feed prasadam to the guests. And that's the system. Tirupati Balaji, I went with Prabhupada, by the way. Sorry, I'm blowing my horn, but I'm not really, I'm just narrating to you the fact of history. I was a 19-year-old, a bacha, a kid. But I happened to go with Prabhupada to Tirupati in April 1974. And lots of prasad was provided to us that I've never seen again. But everyone who goes to Tirupati gets prasad, and there's a coupon. I don't know if that system is still going on, but a free bhojan coupon for anyone who goes for darshan. ISKCON has started that in Mayapur. Although we sell prasad in the Gadda building. I'm not sure how many people watching this have been to Mayapur, but I assume quite a few. And then there's the Sulabh Bhojanalaya, where they sell a very, very reasonable rate prasad. But now there's a new pavilion, and every day 300 to 1,000 people get a free meal who go to Mayapur. That was the system. Temples used to feed prasad to the visitors. And you have that. It might not be free, but in Srinathji, Dwarka, Sri Rangam, all the big temples, Simhachalam, I don't know how many people have heard of that, near Vishakhapatnam, Lakshmi Varaha Narasimha Swami, big temple on a hill, ancient. So there are so many temples in India I've been to. Jagannath is the most famous of all, right? Chappan Bhog every day. And they cook in clay pots according to parampara, pure sattvic, no red chilies, no Western vegetables even. Whatever the old system is there for Jagannath. And to take Jagannath Prasad, you must have a banana leaf. You must sit on the floor. Those of you who have been to Puri know this. So one thing is taking prasad, you get detached, you get purified. That is a higher taste. But too much prasad is also not good. Today I was sent a picture from Vrindavan of somebody who has just been shown the door from ISKCON Vrindavan. I'm sorry I'm telling you this. And I didn't know this person. There was a bit of a what do you call it? We call it a storm in a teacup, right? Prabhupada had said sometimes people come, they take some money and they go away. This man didn't go away, but he became, my God, like an elephant. I saw the picture. I didn't know him. So Prabhupada had written in Nectar of Instruction, Upadeshamrita. Well, not Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami wrote Atyahara, right? Prayashascha prajalpo niyamagraha. Janasangascha lolyam cha shadbhir bhakti vinashyati. Shadbhihi, by these 6 things. By these 6 things, bahubachanam shadbhihi. Bhakti vinashyati. Bhakti is destroyed by too much eating. So one of the things in detachment is to eat less. And that's difficult. It's difficult. We develop the habit of eating a lot, nice prasad, Jagannath prasad or whatever. Prabhupada commented, too much prasad is also not good. It may be prasad, it's transcendental, it's purifying, but you shouldn't eat too much. So there are many rules for detaching ourselves. And it's not easy. And we may not be successful in this lifetime. We may not be successful. Prabhupada was, what is it called in Hindi? We say sakaratmak, which is a Sanskrit word, positive, an optimist. He preached in a very positive way, but he also, privately expressed so many criticisms, and isn't it? So don't eat too much. Try and be detached from your family. There are 4 stages of sannyas, right? Kutichak, Bahudak, Parivrajaka, and Paramahamsa. So the first stage, Kutichak, you live with your family in a separate room, and the family supplies you meals. So it's a system of gradual detachment. There was a sannyasi in Bangalore in the Ramanuja Sampradaya. This was 22, 23 years ago, who was dressed in saffron, and he was very popular, and he was living in a house. I mean, he was living in his family house, but in a separate room. He was a kutichak. by definition. Very popular individual at the time. I don't know much if he's still around. I don't think so. He was old, so you never know. Wow, how am I doing on time, Prabhu?
You have enough time. You have enough time, Prabhuji.
How to come to a conclusion here, and then you want some time for questions and answers, right?
You can go on till 8:30, and then we can open the floor for question and answers.
Another 15 minutes. Wow.
It's up to you. If you would like to pause here, we can also.
I'm just, let me think. I did a bit of homework, believe it or not, but it was very little homework. And what was that homework? Should I go over the homework now? I could do that. Wait a minute, where am I? Okay. Oh, whoops. I'm looking at everybody's picture. Got to the homework here. So what I did as homework was to go to vanipedia.org and type detachment. That was what, and higher taste. I did both. Detachment brought up 795 references that Prabhupada made in his books to detachment. I don't know how many of the listeners do this. So I won't go to all of them, but I'll just mention, like from the second canto of Bhagavatam, there are 16 references in the purports to detachment. Then in the third canto, I'm terrible in mathematics, so you got to give me, I think there's eight references to detachment. In the introduction to the Bhagavatam, there's reference to detachment. Now in the first canto, there are quite a slew of references. Oh, there's more from the third canto. So, oh no, yeah, I mentioned third canto, but there's many, many more from the third canto. There are 100 references per page, and there's 8 pages, so it comes to 795 references. And let's go to the Sanskrit. Jata Viragaya, to him who has developed detachment. That's in the shloka of 3:32:42. Then I see in 3:32:34 to 36, Nivrittiman, containing detachment. So these words indicate detachment. Viragaya, Vairagya, Viragaya, Vairagyena, by detachment, 3:32:34, 36. Same verse. Nivrittiman, one who became detached. Viraktya, by detachment, 3:32:30. Right? So I didn't memorize these words, but hearing this word, I recognize it. Viraktya, Nivrittiman, Jata Viragaya, and Vairagyena. Vairagyena, by detachment. So by these suffixes, by practice in Sanskritam, you understand the meaning of the word. Asangaha, Prabhupada translates it as detachment, freedom from ordinary. That's, we already mentioned in Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamritam, Janasangas Chalolyam cha. Janasanga, associating with ordinary people destroys bhakti. So asangaha is detachment. Let's see what else we have. The Vairagyam 3:32:23. Asangamena, with detachment. Jata Vairagya, detachment is born. right? Uparatihi, detachment. There's another pariyavachi. So this is one of the features of Samskrita Bhasha, that you have many words for one idea. Like water, there's 150 words. So memorizing, knowing all those words is not easy. And you're not speaking. Vyavaharaha Samskrita Dwarena Prayaha Janaha na kurvanti. Karaniyam yadi Samskrita Bhasha Shikshaniyaha. If you want to learn Sanskrit, you have to speak. How can you learn it just by Ramaha Ramo Ramaha? That's not a way to learn a language. It actually destroyed the language, believe it or not. Excuse me. I usually try to avoid this. So Bhagavatam definitely stressing detachment. Many verses here. That's page 1. I'm just looking. There's in the purports, Prabhupada mentions detachments. Here's Linga Bhangaha, destroying, detachment. Bhangaha actually means destroying. Linga, here it's translated astral body. Astral body, I think, is Manaha Buddhi Ahankaraha. These mind, intelligence, and Ahankar, false ego. Wow. So if I move on, I can go on and on and on. Then let's go to higher taste. Higher taste only brings up wait a minute, I gotta catch this, 41 records. But the classic verse about higher taste is Gita 2:59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha. Interesting. Niraharaha. No food. No food. Here it says, by negative restrictions. Prabhupada translated like that. Niraharasya, but technically nir, without. Ahar, food. It's very clear. Vishaya, Vishayaha. Oh no, excuse me. Vishayaha. Bahuvachanam, plural. Objects for sense enjoyment, vinivartante, are practiced to be refrained from. Niraha, this is the padapat. You understand padapat? Nobody does that. These words, padapataha, reading the words in Sanskritam. Vishayaha, objects for sense enjoyment. Vinivartante, are practiced to be refrained from. Niraharasya, by negative restrictions. Dehinaha, for the embodied. Rasavarjam, giving up the taste. Rasaha, sense of enjoyment. Api, although there is. Asya, his. Param, far superior things. Drishtva, by experiencing. It actually means, Prabhupada writes by experiencing, but technically Drishtva, having seen. Having seen param, higher things. Nivartate, he ceases. So rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. When you get that taste for something higher, you give up the lower. And so the translation, the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So ultimately, that is Krishna consciousness, right? Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. If you worship Krishna, madhyaji, worship me, right? Manmana, think of me, bhava madbhaktaha, become my devotee. Madhyaji, worship me. Mam namaskuru, offer your respects to me. then that's the higher taste. So Krishna teaches so many things to Arjuna, and then he teaches him to worship me. And there are many other verses where Krishna says, worship me. Boy, right now it's not coming into my mind. This Manmana Baba Mad Bhakto is twice in the Gita, not once, but twice. What are the other famous verses? Mat chitta madgata prana, bodhayantaf parasparam. Thinking of me, mad chitta madgata prana. Your life goes for me. Bodhayantaha parasparam. Devotees enlighten each other, which is what is going on right now. I hope you found this enlightening. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's chewing the chewed. I don't know. So, what is it? Bodhayantaf parasparam katayantash chamam nityam. Always talking about me. But we don't do that. We don't talk about Krishna unless we have a formal lecture like this. Informally, do we talk about Krishna? I hope there's a very good verse I want to recite that's open. Unfortunately, I have not memorized it. But no, it's here. Can I recite this one verse with your permission? Ya dohane vahanena. Nay. Ya dohane vahane. Matano palepa. Prenking kanarbharudito. Ksanamarjanadau. Gayanti chainam anurakta diyo. Shrukantyo dhanya vrajastriya urukrama chittayanaha. Here's the translation. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Skanda 10, Adhyaya 44, Shloka 15. The ladies of Vraja are the most fortunate of women, because with their minds fully attached to Krishna and their throats always choked up with tears, they constantly sing about him while milking the cows, winnowing grain, churning butter, gathering cow dung for fuel, riding on swings, taking care of their crying babies, sprinkling the ground with water, cleaning their houses, and so on. By their exalted Krishna consciousness, they automatically acquire all desirable things. So this is a verse that describes what the higher taste really is. The higher taste is always thinking about Krishna and going crazy for Krishna. Sorry, that's a modern type of expressionism. But these, what is it? Vraja Gopis. These are the description of the Vraja Gopis. And the Vraja Gopis, they did simple activities, simple day-to-day activities, but the Bhagavatam glorifies them as the greatest devotees of Lord Krishna, because they're always thinking of him, whatever they're doing. They're always, their minds are fully attached to him. There's another example of the ladies of Vrindavan, which are the Dvija Patnis, right? Jaya Jaya Dvija Patni. Narottam Das Thakur wrote that, right? Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan. Jaya Jaya Dvija Patni. And so the Dvija Patnis, when the cowherd boys came to them, they immediately came running to Krishna. They were attracted to Krishna. So Krishna consciousness is the higher taste. And the Vraja Gopis and the Dvija Patnis exemplify Krishna consciousness. And yet, the Vraja Gopis and the Dvija Patnis, they didn't give up their occupations according to the Varnashram system. They followed the Varnashram system. And the Varnashram system for women, street dharma, are all these things that are described here in the Bhagavatam. Yeah, it's the Bhagavatam, not me. So these modern concepts, caste system should be broken. These are anti-Vedic concepts. That women should do the jobs of men is an anti-Vedic concept. I don't care who says it. That's my personal opinion, but that's the tradition. Parampara, evam parampara praptam. This is not something new. Prabhupada, in a lecture, I think it was at London. Can I read this lecture? Very interesting. Boy, I just saw that. It's open on my computer here somewhere. Where did I, wait a minute. Huh? Oh. No. On Prabhupada's lecture on Bhagavad Gita 16:11. I'm going to have to open it because I thought it was open. Give me 1 second. No. Boy, where did I? Prabhupada's lecture. Ah, I got it. I'm sorry. I wasted your 2 minutes. Okay, this was a lecture that Prabhupada gave in Honolulu on February 7th, 1975. Quote, so sometimes people say the modern age and past time or future, past, present, and future, the real principles of life, they are the same. It does not change. Millions of years ago, did I lose Zoom? Oh, you got it out there? You got it up on the board? Who put that on the screen?
I did. Would you like me to share it?
Yeah, great. Anyway, or I can share my screen, whatever. You got it, huh? Okay, I'll read it. You can show them. So millions of years ago, the past and present and future as they were, at the present moment also, the same past, present, and future are there. So there is no question of modern age or past age. The nature's law is the same. Millions of years ago, the sun was rising early in the morning, and it is rising early in the morning at present moment also. There is no change. Millions of years ago, all living entities were interested in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The same thing is going on. There is no change. So Krishna spoke all these words 5,000 years ago. Apart from taking account of millions of years, because nature's law is the same, so even in those days, 5,000 years ago, you'll find the demoniac people as they are now. These words about the demons. There were demons like Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa. So many demons were there. So many demons there were, historical demons. But their process of life was the same as the modern demons. There is no change. Therefore, Shastra means it is for all the time. Not that Shastra was meant for in the past for something else and now something else. That is not the fact. That means Shastra, that it does not change. The time, place, and atmosphere, according to that, everything is the same. So what's happening is some of our devotees are saying that, what Prabhupada wrote in the Bhagavatam was for the remote past, not for today. Why? There's an agenda. That agenda doesn't have to do with detachment and higher taste, or does it? Maybe it does. Because they cannot become detached from what we call, get ready, cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism. What is cultural Marxism? Classless society. Now, there's one quote from Prabhupada, the ideal classless society. But if you go deeper into what Prabhupada teaches, he teaches that there are classes in society. That's Varnashram. Varnashram, Prabhupada said, divide society. He was talking about Varnashram. So if anyone tells you Varnashram is for the past, or what Prabhupada wrote in a particular purport in his books is for the past and not for today, you can pull out this lecture of Prabhupada and tell him, that's not what Prabhupada taught, my dear Prabhu, or my dear Mataji. Although some Matajis want to be called Prabhu. In Sanskrit, if you want to call a woman Prabhu, you say Prabvi. If you want to call a woman a sadhu, you say Sadvi. And if you want to call a woman a guru, you say Gurvi. Strilingam. Samskrita Bhasha, Russian, German, Latin, there is gender distinction in the language. Strilingam, Pulingam, Napumsakalingam. 3 genders. 2 genders and 1 no gender, neutral. Now the time is up.